Hello kindergarten, I'm going to read you a very special story about a very clever little girl called Scarlette Beane. And this story has been written by Karen Wallace. Shall we see what she gets up to? When Mrs. Beane first saw her daughter's face, it was as red as beetroot, and the ends of her fingers were green. I shall call her Scarlette, declared Mrs. Beane. She will grow tall and strong and do something wonderful. Wonder what she's going to do. Mr. and Mrs. Beane lived in a house that looked like a garden shed. It was cosy and made of wood, but it was very small. They worked outside as much as they could, and Scarlette lay in her pram and listened to the flowers grow. I can't hear flowers grow, can you? And when she slept, she dreamt of doing something wonderful. On her 5th birthday, Grandfather Beane gave Scarlette a vegetable garden, and her mother gave her a set of wooden tools. Her father built a wooden fence to keep the rabbits out, and she made a white gate so Scarlette could open it all by herself. Scarlette loved her new garden, and she pulled up all the weeds. She dug the soil until it was crumbly like chocolate. She planted a row of carrots and a row of onions and a row of parsley. That night she went to bed, and the ends of her fingers glowed like green lights, sparkling in the dark. The next morning, Scarlette ran to her garden. Her carrots were huge, the biggest carrots anyone had ever seen. Her onion was ginormous, the biggest onions anyone had ever seen. And her parsley was thick, just like a jungle. Everyone in the village came to help pull them up. They used bulldozers to dig the carrots. They drove forklift trucks to carry the onions, and they cut the parsley with chainsaws. It's cutting it down. Mr. Beane's kitchen was too small for so many vegetables, so she made soup in a concrete mixer. That's normally what builders build houses with. The house was too small for so many people. So Mr. Beane served the soup in the garden. Everyone said it was the best soup they had ever tasted. And when it began to rain, they ate second helpings under the table because their house was too small. That night, Scarlette Beane dreamed of something wonderful. She crept out of bed. In one hand she held a small trowel, and in the other she had lots and lots of seeds. This is what a trowel is. She had lots of seeds. High above the meadow, the moon hung like a pearl in the sky. Scarlette dug a hole and put all the seeds at the bottom. As she covered them with earth, the ends of her fingers flashed like green stars. Can you see it? The next morning, the sun rose like a huge gold coin. In the middle of a meadow was a castle made of vegetables. It had turnips and a drawbridge held up by corn and 2 cucumber towers. They stood at each of the corners. Mr. Bean couldn't believe his eyes. It was the house of all his dreams. Mrs. Bean kissed her daughter's face. "I knew you'd do something wonderful," she whispered. Scarlett was so happy she went red as a beetroot, and the ends of her fingers sparkled like fireworks. Well, I think Scarlett is a very clever girl. Her mummy and daddy moved into the castle because their little wooden house was so small. That was kind of her, wasn't it? And very clever. I've built a vegetable castle with the help of Charlie and Ben. Shall we have a look at it? Come on, Scarlett, let's go and see. This is my castle. I've used cucumbers, asparagus, very large onions, and carrots with the stalks still on. I've had a giant squash, radishes, aubergines, parsnips, and I think I'll move in my parsley to add a jungle for the garden. I think we've got soup tonight. Vegetable soup. Hope you enjoyed that story, kindergarten. Bye!